aspects and the OAuth aspects in FPG. Then we will go into the debugging aspect, like how, like once we create the proxy endpoint, how we can debug the HTTP request response. And at last, like we will go through a sample code where we are doing a call out to this FPG proxy endpoint. So in this approach, we will discuss basically two approaches. One is the no code approach, where we are using Flow and external services to achieve this. And the second one is via the coding approach, where we have created an Aura component to do a call out to the FPG. Okay. So let's discuss like what is FPG, right? So as you all know, or maybe a few of you are familiar with FPG, or maybe few of you are not familiar. So FPG is a platform for developing and managing API. So it's nothing but like a gateway you can consider. It's a gateway which helps you to create, and manage the API. So what is the benefit of FPG is like it sits like a middle layer. It helps you to create a proxy layer via which you don't need to worry about your backend. So what happens is like FPG sits in the middle. So from your client, you do a call out to the FPG endpoint, which is nothing but the proxy, and that proxy endpoint indirectly calls to the actual or the desired endpoint. So FPG is nothing like is playing the role of a proxy layer, or in other words, you can say it's playing the role of a gateway. So the benefit of this is like you don't need to worry about the backend service. Like what happens is like in most of the projects, what we have seen is like generally when the project kicks off, right, we don't see the backend, the actual backend service is been ready, right? Or even if it is ready, say it's an ongoing changes which goes on in every service, the backend service. Say today they have released the version 1 of that service, and you do an actual call out to that service. So tomorrow again, say there is a change in that version 2 of the service. So based on that, you need to change your code as well do do that call out. So the maintenance gets involved a lot, and so to prevent all those things where you don't need to worry about the backend services, right? Whatever is the backend services, even if the backend services gets changed, you don't need to touch your HTTP, you don't need to touch your client which is doing the call out to the service. What you can do is like you can simply make those say tomorrow, so today the version 1 of the service has been published and your client is doing a call out to the version 1 of the service. That is fine. Say tomorrow, say the endpoint of the service gets changed to v2, then what you need to do is like you don't need to touch your calling code. What you need to do is like in the FPG via configurations, you can simply change that new target endpoint up, and your code will simply take care. So this is one of the benefit of the gateway or the API management platform. And just like we have a lot of other API management platforms available in the market, like Amazon API Gateway is also there. But one good thing which I have seen, if you like ask me about the differences between the both Amazon API Gateway and this Google FPG. So one is in terms of like the support aspect, right? From FPG, like you will have a very good support, and plus FPG provides you a versioning capability, which I will show you in my subsequent slides, how it helps you to maintain different versions of your endpoints. And along with that, it helps you to easily configure the quota policies, as well as any other kind of like spike arrest policies or response caching. Everything can be configured very easily. And apart from this, like this platform also gives you an ability to do a call out. Like it has a lot of extensions by which you can do a call out to other like other services as well. Okay, so let me first start with the sign up process. So what you need to do initially is like you need to go to Google and just type in FPG Edge. Okay, so the moment you type in FPG Edge, you will be directed to this screen. Okay, where you have to first create an account. In this account only you will get an ability to create the endpoint. So this will be the landing page. So in this landing page, you will get an option called create account. Okay, so you need to just type in all the basic fields here. So it asks you about first name, last name, email, and all the fields. So you type in all the details here, and once you basically create the account, you get an email where you need to verify the account that you have created. So few things you have to keep in account, like since it's a free trial account, right? So these are some of the capabilities that comes with this registration. You can only do 1,000 API calls, then only 30 days of analytics report you can run, right? So this kind of limitations or capabilities will come with the free account. But if your organization is using like paid one, then this problem will not arise. So once you have created the account, let me sign in first. Okay, so this will be the landing page of the APG, Google APG platform, where you will be creating the proxies. So if you see here, there are a couple of tabs. We will come to each of these tabs later. We will mainly focus on develop and publish tab today. So, so once you register, right? So here you will see a name coming up here. This is a very important name. This is the organization name. So once you create an account, you will get an organization name associated to it. He is nothing but the administrator of this account. So since I have registered, so I am nothing but the administrator of the account. So I will have the full privilege and all the endpoints. One thing that you will notice is like whenever I will be creating an endpoint here right now, right? You will see all the endpoint will basically start with this name. Okay. So let me start with creating a proxy endpoint. Okay. And another thing, just to give a heads up before that. So the target endpoint that we will be using for this entire demo session is the Apigee. This is the target endpoint that we will be using. So this is the target endpoint that we will be using for the demo purpose. So Apigee provides a lot of like free one, and you can have, if you want to do integration with lot of other APIs, like I'm using this JSON API, you can do this XML API, and there are a lot of other APIs, free APIs available for doing the demo. So what we are doing is we will be using this API for the entire thing. Okay, so let's come to this. Okay, so just click on this API proxies. Okay, so this screen basically shows you all the proxies. Proxy is nothing but the endpoint that we will be creating. So this will show you all the endpoint that we have created. So you have to click on this proxy button. So this will give you a lot of options like reverse proxy, no target proxy, SOAP service, hosted target, right? Upload proxy bundle. These are the various kinds of endpoint that you can create. So today we will mainly focus on these two, reverse proxy and no target proxy. So let's discuss what is reverse proxy. So reverse proxy is nothing like, it's the proxy that you will create, and from your client, this endpoint or this proxy that you will be creating, you will do a call to this proxy, and this proxy will in turn call this endpoint which we are using for our demo. So this is the target endpoint, or the desired endpoint, or you can call the backend endpoint, and this endpoint that we will be creating is a middle layer, or the facade layer, or you can say the gateway that we'll be creating. And from our code, we'll be calling this particular service. So let's see how we can do this. So we will click on this reverse proxy. So it will ask you for a name. So let's give demo reverse proxy. Now it will ask for an base path. So this is nothing but the endpoint, how the endpoint will look like. So let me give it like this. And this, so here you can see in this proxy, in this reverse proxy endpoint, right, it will ask you for the target endpoint, or in other words, it is the URL of the backend service that you want to invoke. So here we will simply copy paste this one. Okay, I click on next. So once I click on next, it asks me like how do I want to manage this API, whether I want to like protect it via API key, or I want to protect it via OAuth, or I want no authorization, that is it will be an open API. So for the time being, I will select open API, but I will show you like how to make an API protective with very minimal steps. So for the timing, we are considering no authorization. Okay. So the moment I click on next, you can see an endpoint got created, right? You can see, and I told you, right, this name will be nothing but the organization name, which you will find here. So this entire name is the organization name, and you can see there are two endpoints. One is the HTTPS endpoint, which is the secure one, and another is the HTTP one, which is the default one. Okay, and we have two URL. One is a prod URL, another is a test URL. So there are basically, it creates you on the fly two environment specific URLs. Okay, so let me click on next. So it gives you a summary, like this will be the basic proxy base path, this is the target, and this is the deployment process, like in which environment you want to deploy, right? So so I will not consider prod. So because since we are developing right now, let me deploy it into test. Okay. So now what happened is like it created the test specific endpoint, and you see it has created two test specific endpoint. One is the HTTP one and one is the HTTPS one. Okay, so let me just show you this. Let me close this. We're not using this. So this is the endpoint which I have created right now. Okay, so you can see when I click on this endpoint, it gives me the response of the backend service. I have not directly hit the backend service, but I have directly hit my service, and it is giving me the response of the desired backend one. Till this, any questions? Okay, taking it as no. So this is the summary screen. So this is the endpoint that we have created, right? And you can see this is the base path. This is the target endpoint. Now, this is how you can simply configure a reverse proxy. Now, let's consider a case. Let's showcase a case where we will be creating a no target proxy. Where let's consider a use case. Say in your project, the backend service has not been ready, and say your team wants to test the connectivity with Apigee layer, because when the backend service will be ready, you will anyways use the Apigee as a middle layer to do the call out to the actual service. But say your backend service has not been ready, but say in one of your sprint you have a use case where you need to test the connectivity, whether you are able to successfully successfully able to connect to the middle layer or not, or to the proxy layer or not. How will you achieve those use cases, right? Because you cannot achieve those use cases via this reverse proxy right now, because in reverse proxy you need to provide a target endpoint. But the use case which I'm talking about is, say your target endpoint is not ready, and say later on it might be ready, and you need to test the connectivity via the middle layer. So how in those situations, how will you achieve that? So for that, what we will do is we have to create a no target proxy. So last time we selected this, right? So now we will select no target. So now you see, if you remember in the first step, right, when we created the reverse proxy, there was one field here, one text box here asking for the target endpoint, right? So now that field is not there because it's a no target one. It will not do anything. It will be used to it's just like a mock API that we are creating here. I will again select pass through. Okay, so you can see if I click on this, right, you're not getting anything here, right? Because this is you can say this is kind of like the no target endpoint where we are not calling any desired service. Now say you want to show you want to test, you are testing the connectivity, right? So now you want to show a sample response to the user. In that scenario, this tabs will come into play. So here you can see a couple of things are there in this tab. If you see here, you see this particular drop down. This particular drop down shows the stages, like it has production stage and the test stage. And we have selected the test stage, so our changes are right now there till the test environment. So that's why this is showing as green beside the test. Also, it has the ability to show the revision. So this is the first revision that we have created, and this is currently there in the test environment. If I go to the develop tab, this is where we will work most of the time. Now, what happens is like whenever you click on the develop tab, whenever you create a endpoint, it will always come with these two things: pre-flow and post-flow. So what is pre-flow first? So whenever you make a call out to any service, so in this case, whenever we are making a call out to this endpoint, be it reverse or no target, doesn't depend on what type you're creating. So whenever you're doing a call out to any APG endpoint, first the pre-flow gets executed. Pre-flow is nothing but any logic that you want to execute when the request comes to this service for the first time. So whenever the request comes to this service, the pre-flow, whatever things you assign in the pre-flow, that will be executed. Then we have something called post-flow. Post-flow is nothing but, say, whenever the response gets ready, right? And after the response gets ready, you want to handle some logic that comes in the post-flow. And we have something called conditional flows that we can create from here, conditional flows. Now, what is the purpose of conditional flows? Conditional flows is nothing but, it's just like a path. So say right now our endpoint path is API proxy / demo target, right? So after that, say you want to create a custom path. Say you want to create a path like, say, testing. Okay, and let me select. So this is the path. So what will happen is, so when the request first comes, the pre-flow will always be executed. Now, any conditional flow, say you want to do a call out to this particular service where the endpoint is after this demo target / testing. In that particular scenario, if you want to execute some own custom logic, that you can configure in this pre-flow builder. And any logic, any post-processing logic, or after the response has been ready, that you can simply configure in this post-flow. Now let's consider a scenario that, let's try to configure this particular no target endpoint. So we have this response, right? So I clicked on this pre-flow response, and you can see there are a lot of things which are coming up. Like they are categorized into traffic management sections, security sections, and a lot of extensions capabilities also they are providing you. So say we have basically this quota management policy, spike arrest policy, response cache, right? And in security aspects, we have this API key. These are a couple of different things which has been provided. So now say this endpoint that we were calling right now, right? So this endpoint was not showing any response. Basically, it was like a blank page. But now we just want to show a user, say whenever I am calling a service, I want to show them a response that a particular JSON, that the status code is 200 and the response message is, say, successfully connected. So in that scenario, for that kind of showing any message to the user, we use this assign message property. This assign message property is something that we use. So the moment you click on this assign message property, right? So it basically creates this particular node. And once you double click on this node, it's just like if you have worked on MuleSoft and all, you will get this XML file, and you have to just change this XML file. So now, since we need to just set the response, so what I will do is, like, I will just simply set the response. I will remove all the unnecessary things. And say I want to set up payload, right? I have a code ready for that. So in order to set up payload, what you can do is, like, within the set tag, since we are setting, right, we are setting a response that that's why I specified the type as response, and this is set. And this content type, payload content type, I specified as application JSON, and say you want to specify this response code as, say, 200, and say message right. So the moment you click on this, so once you are done with the modification and everything, right, what you can do is you can go here and you can click on this save button. So it shows you a message submitting revision 1 to the server, means it is saving in the background. Revision 1 save. And this currently this version is in test. So whatever changes you are doing, this is the beauty of this basically the revision. So currently your changes, whatever changes you are doing, it will not touch your production endpoint. This green sign indicates your changes are there in the test phase. Okay. See, so if you remember initially when we called the service, right, there was no response coming up because it was a no target proxy. Even now also it's a no target proxy, but what I have done is like, say the backend service is not ready and you want to test the connectivity with this mock endpoint, you can simply without minimal effort, you can just configure the assign message property here, and you can set a sample payload, and that sample payload will appear here whenever someone will try to connect to your web service, or you can say the endpoint. Okay, so I think I've covered the reverse proxy, how to create reverse proxy and how to create no target proxy. Let's come into the other aspects, like what are the things that we can do. So these are the things that we will be covering up today. So we will start with quota policy. So let me start with, so I will go to the, okay. So this is, so we will be doing this, all this demo on this reverse proxy that we have created. So I will go to the, for anything, for any development, you need to go to this develop tab. That will be the starting point. So we will be first testing the quota policy. So say you have created this endpoint, and now this endpoint, you want to make a, you want to have a check, like say in per minute only 3 requests you want to allow. After that, you want to block any incoming, any get call which you are doing to this endpoint, you want to block that. So say, so for that kind of a situation, the quota policy comes into picture. So what quota policy does is like, say if you want to protect your endpoint for, say, for particular amount of request, then you can simply configure the quota policy. So for that, what we will do is we'll come to this pre-flow and we'll click on this step, we'll click on this quota, right? So once you click on this quota, if you see here, right, in the request phase, the quota has come up, right? So what we will do right now is we will make some modification. We don't want this type as calendar. Okay. So let me explain you. So this allow count equal to something, right? So this count indicates how many requests you want to allow. Okay, so I want to allow 3 requests, say for example. Now this count, this count indicates how many requests you want to allow. Now this count indicates in which interval you want to allow. Say I want to allow 3 requests in a 1 minute interval. So this interval will be 1 and this will be minute. So it means that, say in a minute, only 3 requests, like only 3 requests will be allowed per minute. After that, it will give you quota exception, quota policy violation exception, it will throw you. So say sometime what happens is like the server sometimes gets locked out due to maximum number of retries, right? So if you want to protect your endpoint, right, at that time, what we can do is like we can configure in the endpoint level the quota policies, which will prevent you from unnecessary making a call out to the services. So I have created this service. Let me click on save. So it's in test phase right now. So I will check it here in the trace phase. Okay, so trace is the place where you can test. Like you want, if it's just like doing a call out using a postman and then testing it, it's similar like of a environment where you can test your proxy endpoints. So I will just, so before doing that, you have to just click on this start trace session. So just click on this start trace session. So it is just logging. It has started logging your session. Is just like setting up debug logs in Salesforce. And then you just click on send. Now try to click on 4 or 5 requests. Okay. So you can see, right, there is a, you can see that the endpoint, right, it is calling the endpoint and the status is like coming as 200, right? So which is nothing but the success. You are able to properly connect to the endpoint, and this is giving an ability to see which and all, what was the response which came, and you will be properly able to see the proxy name, the proxy qualified name, everything you will be able to see from here, all the details. And then you can see a particular response. You can see this quota policy, right? And then you can see this is the HTTPS in X forwarded prototype as HTTPS. So these are the various things which you can check from this. So once you are done, you can just stop this trace session, which has completed the logging. So by this, you will be able to basically minimize. So whenever someone will try to do a call from their application, so they will get an exception like quota violation exception. We will see like in the subsequent slide from the Lightning application, when we will do a call out to the endpoint, we will see that error message when we are trying to hit multiple time in an alert box. So this is the advantage of quota policies. Now say we want to do something like, so we have completed quota policy. Now say spike arrest. Now spike arrest is something like, say there's a minimal difference between spike arrest and quota policy. So say in quota policy, what we did is like in a minute, say only 3 requests we were allowing, right? Now say what it can happen sometimes is like at a particular fraction of time, there can be a more increase in the traffic. So say suppose in a particular minute, we want only in a particular seconds of a minute, we want only 3 requests to pass through, not in the entire duration of the minute. So which indicates there's a sudden increase in the traffic. So for a particular fraction of a time, if the traffic has increased and if we want to protect our endpoint from that sudden increase of traffic, then the spike arrest policy comes into picture. It is again the same thing. What if you want to configure the spike arrest policies? What you can do is like you can simply go here and you can click on the spike arrest. The spike arrest will come here. And in the spike arrest, what you can do is like you have the ability to set up the configurations. So here, this is the portion which indicates that what will be that particular fraction of second where you want to limit the control. So now say if I write here say 2 p.m., it means like 2 per minute. It means like 2 per 60 seconds or 1 per 30 seconds. This amount of request will it allow. So although it might look similar to quota policy, in quota policy it was like in the entire duration of 1 minute only 3 requests we are allowing it, but here it means like 2 per minute. What 2 per minute means, in like 2 per 60 seconds or 1 per 30 seconds, like only in 30 seconds duration only 1 request we will be allowing it. So it can happen like within the 30-second request, if more than 1 request comes, then similar like quota policy violation, we will get a spike arrest policy violation exception once that comes in. So this helps you to basically prevent in a certain fraction of time if a maximum amount of traffic gets hit. So this is the advantage of spike arrest policy. Now we come to another one called response cache. Now again the same thing. So response cache, as the name suggests, so say you are calling this endpoint is basically calling your backend service, right? And the backend service is returning you some result. Now say you want to cache that result. So say that you don't want to do a server call every time whenever the request comes to this endpoint. So in those scenarios, you can use this response cache. You have to just click on this response cache. You can see the response cache has come up. You can do anything. You can rearrange between them. Like say if you have a requirement to first cache the requirement first, that like whenever the request first comes to the service first, it will check from the cache, and then all the quota policies will come into picture. All those you can do by simply just swapping the position. So first, so if I add this response cache here, you can see a lot of things have come up here. So here the key things, like if you have seen in the spike arrest one, the spike arrest one, the rate one was coming into picture, which was determining how many calls you can do, right, in 30 seconds or whatever time interval you specify. In response cache, this timeout specifies, this is a timeout in seconds, like till this time, whenever the request comes to this service, it will check the cache first, and if it is within this time frame, say if I specify here 10, so what it means, like whenever the request comes, whenever we are doing any request to this service within 10 seconds, it will always retrieve, it will try to retrieve it from the cache. If we are doing any call after 10 seconds, since the cache has expired, right, since it is within the expiry settings, expiry settings tag. So if it is more than 10 seconds, what it will do is like it will relay the call to the backend service and then fetch the result. So if it is within the 10 seconds, it will not relay the call to the target endpoint. It will simply it will give you the results from this cache. And all this are like configuration things, like no need to do anything. Just we have to just configure this, specify the timeout as per our requirement, and we can just click on save, and that will take care. The proxy endpoint will take care of this settings. So this is how you can basically monitor the spike arrest and the response caching and the quota policy. Now we have something called API key configuration. This is very important. So if so say this is a common kind of a requirement. So let me so you can see this response is coming right now, right? So now this API is kind of like this API is kind of like an open API, right? It is not API protected. Now we want to protect this API with a particular key, which is common in all the web service. So how can we do that? Again, the same thing. For doing that, you have to come to this develop tab. Now here, once you come to this develop tab, once you click on this pre-flow, you click on this step, right? So here there is something. So this OAuth and this API key will come under this section, the security section. The previous things that we were discussing was under the traffic management aspects, like the quota policies, spike arrest. So here we will check this API key. Okay. So you just need to bring this one in the request phase. So it will bring this verify API component. If you click on this, this is the API key, and what it indicates, this line, it is like request.query param.api key. So what it indicates, like if you do a call after saving this one going forward, you have to provide the API key in the query param. If you don't provide this in the query param, it will not work. So it is not mandatory like you have to provide always this in the query param. You can provide it in the form params also. So then you have to just change this to request.form params.api key. But this by default it comes with query params. So by default it expects that if you save this one, let me deploy this to test the changes. Yeah, so by default now if I make this endpoint, right, so it is giving an error right now, failed to resolve API key. You need to provide this API key right now to access this endpoint. So this endpoint no longer right now is open API. It needs an API key to access this API. So how can we now create an API key in this scenario, right? So for that, what we have to do is, so we are doing all these things in this develop tab right now. So for doing this, what you have to first do is you have to come to this publish tab. Okay, in publish tab we have a lot of things. So mainly we will focus on for like doing setting up API keys or OAuth. Only these three things will come into picture: API products, developers, and app. Okay, so first thing we have to come into API products. So before coming into product, let's discuss what is an API product. So API product is nothing but it's just like a package. It's a package where you club up all the endpoints or all the proxies which you have created. So in this one, right, we have right now created this two proxies we have created, right? One is a no target one is a target one. And say you want to package these proxies as a product, right? Then you have in that scenario you have to create a product. So what you need to do is like you have to give a name to this, right? It will ask you which environment you want to deploy. Now here, this is the important. Now we have specified, we have given a name here. Now we have to club up, right, the proxies that you want to add under this package. So for that, what you need to do is like you have to click on this add a proxy. So it will list you all the proxies which are available in your organization, or in other words, all the endpoints that you have created in your organization. Now I want to basically select this one, right? I want this demo reverse proxy. I want to package this proxy because this is the proxy which I am dealing with, right? So I've just chosen up this one here. I click on save. So this will basically create you the reverse proxy. Now once you, sorry, this will create the product. So once you create the product, what we have to do is like you have to come to the developer tab. So say this endpoint which you have created, right? So a particular, we have generally have a service account kind of a thing, right? In all the organization, whenever we are doing any call out, there is a service account which we generally create for accessing the service. So for that, here what you have to do is like you have to simply provide that first name, last name, and the username and email of that user, which we'll be using for calling this service. So for this, what I'm doing here is like I'm using this hello. So I already have this couple of users created. So I will be using this any of these users for doing this. But for the first time, you can whenever you will be doing it in your end, you can just create a developer here. It basically asks you for a few things like first name, last name, username, and the email. Okay, the moment you click create here, then you have to navigate to this apps tab. This apps is nothing like, you can consider like a connected app we create in the Salesforce. Okay, so here what you can do is like you have to create an app here. Okay, now there are two options here, like company and developer. So since if you remember in the previous step, we created a developer, right? So whatever developer you have created, that developer you want to now associate to this connected app. So if you remember in Salesforce, whenever we used to create connected app, all those developers things were not there, when is not there, but it's almost similar to that. Like once you create a connected app, like it asks you for few settings like there also, right? So similar to that here also, like you can specify like this app you want to specify to which developer, like which developer by default will have an access to this particular app. So I've selected this API key demo, which I already have. Now here this is the one, this is the place where it asks you to choose that package which you have basically created. So in other words, what will happen is like once we select the product here or the package here, this app will have an access. Let me first do that. Let me first create this. So what this means, like this app will now have an access to this product, and this product in turn contains your proxy. So in other words, this app will in turn have an access to your endpoint. Okay, so if the moment you click on create, you will see a lot of things has been created. So you get a section called credentials sections here. So this gives you this key is nothing but your client ID, and this is nothing but your client secret, right? So now if I hit your service, it will still give you the API key error, right? So now say if I want to call this one, right, you just need to copy this one and just, you see, now the moment I click on this, I pass in the query parameter API key. Why I passed in the query parameter? Because in the endpoint, if you have remember, it was mentioned like request.queryparams.api key, and this was the name of that key. And I passed the API key here, and it simply like took care of giving you the give you the result. So now basically we can just share this, we can just store this API key, and we will be able to do the call out to the actual service. So if no client has this API key, they will no longer be able to call this service. So this API key will be required to do a call out. Okay. Now I think configuring OAuth. Okay, now let's come to OAuth 1, like how we can basically configure the OAuth policies. So for OAuth policies, again, it's the same thing. Let me go to this endpoint. Let me close this first, and let me go to the, again, we will use that same proxies, that same proxy that we have created for the demo. So we have configured right now an API key one, right? So you can configure as many number of policies here. Now say along with API key, I want to make a double level of protection. Like I want to have an OAuth protection as well, right? So what you can do here is you can just select here OAuth v version 2.0. We are using basically OAuth 2.0. That's why I'm selecting OAuth 2.0. So again, you can do the same thing. If you want first, whenever we're hitting the same point, first we want it to be OAuth protected, then you can either give OAuth first, or you can give API key first. So I want to get rid of API key right now because I've already showed that demo. So let's come to this OAuth. So once you click on this OAuth, right, you will get this automated one. thing. So it has a couple of things, like it gives you the grant type, supported grant types, and there are a couple of other parameters like expiration times and all that you need to provide it. So I have that code with me. Let me show you that. So what I did here is like I just copied. So all this code you will get in like FPG documentation. So I added here an expires in parameter. So this tells that for how long this access token will be expire. For how long it will be valid, and after that, after this particular time, this will expire. And this I am specifying the grant type here. Like I am using the client credential flow here for this OAuth right now. So in this demo, I will be. So there are a lot of different flows for doing this testing. We have the password flow, and also you have the client credentials flow. So I will be using the client credential flow where you need to pass the client ID and client secret of the application for testing it. So now I selected this client credential, and here I have specified the grant type as query parameter. It means like whenever you're requesting for the access token, you need to specify this grant type in the query parameter. And what will be the value of the grant type? It will be nothing but the client credentials. Okay. So I save this. So after you save it, like you can see this is the advantage. Like these are the different versions which are getting created. So currently you're working on the third version, but your second version is deployed to test. This gives you a very good picture, like which is the version which is currently deployed in test. And so my second version will not have the second version will have the API key configured one, and this third version will have this one, this OAuth one that we have configured. So now say I want to deploy this to test. So I have deployed this to test. You can confirm this. So now, sorry. Right. So now you can see once I click on this one, right, it is giving you an error like invalid client identifier is required. Why? Because now we have added that OAuth, right? So it is expecting that OAuth client ID and client secret to be passed into the application, right? So for doing that, again, the same thing that you need to do, just like you did for API keys. You can go to this publish tab. You have to first create an API product, which you have already created. Like in my case, since I'm already using this one, so my case, it has already been assigned. Then you have to create a developer, which you already have. Then you have to come to this app. And in this app, again, like all these steps, since we have already done for API key, we don't need to repeat it. So in this app, right, we have all these settings which got created, client ID and client secret. Now, what you have to do is like, we will open the Postman right now. Let me open this service endpoint. Let me copy this. So why I'm opening the Postman? Because I need to get the access token right now. So if you remember, it was expecting the grant type, right? It was expecting the grant type equal to client underscore credentials, right? It was expecting it's client underscore credentials. So I went to this Postman. Now in this authorization, right? So if you remember in Salesforce also, like whenever we do a call out using the client ID, client secret flow, using the client credential flow, you need to basically provide your client ID and client secret, right? So for that, we generally used to first do a call to the token endpoint, the access token endpoint URL. So we will select. So that is the thing that we are doing here in order to get the access token first, because once we get the access token, then only the process remains the same. Like we use that access token to do the call out to our service. So we select the authorization as a basic authorization. The username will be nothing but the username. This one, this key is nothing but the username. You go here, you paste it here. So this is the password or the client secret. So in case of API key, we were only using this one, but in case of OAuth, right, we need the client ID and client secret. So we got this, right? and now we simply do a call out. So now the moment we do a call out, right, we got a particular response. Now let's see this response. In this response, we have a couple of key information. So if you see, this is the access token, which is the one we got of the service. Now this access token, and we will use, and this is a bearer token. So after this, what we have to do is like we have to use this access token and then do a call out to our service by just providing bearer space, just like Salesforce we used to do, bearer space this access token that we got, and we will be able to connect to our endpoint. And it shows other parameters like expire scene that we have set as per the policies, right? So all those important parameters gets returned from the response. So this is how you can basically configure OAuth and get the access token. And once you get the access token, you have to just pass bearer space in the header. Basically in the request you have to pass bearer space this and call your actual endpoint. You will be able to connect it. So this is how, without any like minimal effort, you will be able to do all the things. Okay, so let's come to the coding aspect. So let me okay, so I will show you first the no code approach, like how we were connecting to the endpoint. Let me show you that. So basically, I have created a service called external services demo, right? And why are these external services? And let me show you here also. Let me go to the account page. So I have basically created a screen flow element, basically a screen flow type of flow, where if you remember that our service was basically returning you 4 things, right? The mock endpoint, first name, last name, and all. So for the time being, I have just retrieved the first name and last name. And here, if I go to this account, I have created one tab here called display API result. And here I have simply drag and drop this flow component, which I have created, this flow, external services demo, or you can say this flow that I have created here. And you can see it fetches me the result like this. If you remember when we were testing this service, right? This service was returning you John Doe San Jose, right? So here you can see the first name and last name it is returning you, and this we are doing without writing any piece of code. So how we are doing this, right? So for this, what I am using is like an external service. We are using it. So for creating an external service, if anyone, if you have worked on creating external service, the first step that we need to do is like creating a name credential. So I've created a name credential here. So I've created a name credential here called, I've given any name here. I've given here sample API as a name, and this is the endpoint URL I have given. This is anonymous authentication because right now it's open API. So you provide the endpoint here, and after you provide the endpoint here, you need to go to the external service section. So in external service section, the external service section, if you click on this edit button, it will ask you the name. You can give any name. It will ask you to it will ask you to choose a name credential. That's why I first created the name credential, because name credential is a mandatory thing. Even if your API is protected or not protected, you still need to create a name credential. So I selected sample API because the sample API name credential points to my endpoint. And here you have to give the API specification or the Swagger schema. This is the most important thing. We have to give the API specification of our endpoint. Now the question is, how we will create this schema, right? How we will create this API specification. I will come to it, but before that, currently Salesforce only supports OpenAPI 2. There are right now 2 OpenAPI specification versions here which are supported. One is version 2 and version 3. Salesforce right now only supports OpenAPI specification or Swagger schema version 2.0. So this we need to keep in mind. So whatever Swagger schema that you're generating, that needs to be in 2.0 format, OpenAPI 2.0 format. So what you need to do is to generate this particular schema, And there are two currently supported formats of this. Salesforce only supports the JSON format, but there is a YAML format also which you can generate. But here it will only accept the JSON one. So in order to generate this API specification of any endpoint, what you need to do is there is a tool available called Swagger Inspector. You can open this Swagger Inspector and you can click on this Try Swagger Inspector. Okay. So the moment you click on this Swagger Inspector, right, you just specify your endpoint URL. So in our case, right, it was this endpoint URL. You can specify what kind of call it is, and you simply click on this request, right? You can see here the response is coming up, and here you see in the history tab also this particular response which came, the summary of it came here. Now, if you want to generate the schema, I mean the Open API schema of this, you just need to select this, go to this Create API Definition bundle. It gives an option like OS the schema 2 supported format 2 or supported format 3. By default, it is 3 because it is the latest one, but you have to select 2 here. And once you select 2 here and you click on, I need to log in here, I think this will give an error. Yeah, please log in. So what you can do is like you have to log in here with GitHub, and or if you have an account here, that also works. So once you click on here, sign in here and click on this and just click on this Create API Definition, what happens is like it creates you this schema automatically. And that schema, this schema it creates you, and this schema is available in two formats like JSON and YAML. You can export the JSON format and you just simply copy paste it. Now, a few things to notice here is like once you generate the schema, few things comes automated, like since you're using a free tool like Swagger Inspector and all, right? So this definition, description, names all will come from that, will be like pre-populated. So you can change this as your wish. So you can see here like a response, if it's a successful response, it is 200, and if it is 200, it is referring to a model 0 class. In model 0 class, it has a lot of properties like first name, last name, city, and state. Why these 4 properties are there? Because your API schema response has 4 properties. It is similar. You can consider it is similar to like we used to have a response and we used to use JSON to Apex for creating a class, right? Only difference is that that was a class, but this is a specification language. It is almost similar to, you can consider this is similar to a WSDL for SOAP, or you can consider this is similar to RAML if you have worked in MuleSoft. It is similar to that. So it will create as per your web service or your endpoint request or response. It will basically create you the specification. So once you create the specification and you hit on this, there will be a next button actually. If you since I am in the edit mode, that's why it is coming like this. So once you click on this, what will happen is it will create, it will first validate that one, and it will show you that this services which came here. So here you can see a get JSON method got created, and these are the response. Now you will have to come to the flow, create a screen flow. So in the screen flow, what you do is like you have to drag and drop an action. So drag and drop an action here. Now you category here by type and choose external service here. The moment you choose external service here, a lot of things will come here. This one I have created for something different purpose. So this is the one which got created. So this is the backend class which Salesforce automatically created for you based on that external service schema to do the call out on behalf of you. Okay, so this is the advantage. You don't need to write any class, not a class for doing a call out, not a test class, nothing. So you just need to select this, give any name here, right? Give any name here, cancel. That is what this particular thing I have done here. And in this response thing, in the screen flow element, what I have done is I have simply drag and drop for the timing any 2 text boxes. And here, this REST API call .200, if you see the schema, 200 was a response, and since that was an object, so I choose here .first name. So say if I want to take other parameters, you do dot and then all the other parameters comes here. Just select here and just click on save. The moment you click on save, you are ready. No need to do anything. Just come to your any desired app builder pages or anywhere, and you drag and drop your component, and you will be able to see the results live. So this is the advantage of external service. Without any single line of code, we were able to do a call out, and there is no Apex code involved or no test classes involved for doing this. Okay, and let me just show you the Lightning code also. So you can, now we will be able to understand like what pain point I was talking about. Okay, so this is the lightning one, right? So let me choose this. So okay, so this is the component that I have created. It's a normal component, no rocket science. Let me open the in the app also, so that will be easier. Okay, so this is the Apigee callout. So this is the lightning application that we have created. So this I will show you like how the pain point that I was talking about. If you see the code involved right here, just for doing this simple callout, you go here, right? So I have created here a class, right? There is a Apex class involved called HTTP callout controller, right? So this class is basically doing the callout. So if you see this class, so this class has so so the moment when you click on this make callout button, right? So this is the make callout controller. From there, we are simply calling this class, the method of this class called get callout response content, which is nothing but this method, get callout response content. This is the method, and you see here it's the same boilerplate code like HTTP. You have to form HTTP requests are set endpoint. Nothing big we are doing here. Like just we are setting the adequate method. We are just writing HTTP send, and then just whatever result is coming, I am deserializing into a map of string and object. This is the only thing that I am doing. But for this simple caller, so this lines of code, and also we have to write a mock like a test class, right, where we have to do a mocking and all, right? So all these things are not required. So because eventually when you click on this one, right, it is eventually giving you the same result which that external service was giving it, but it is happening via code, and so much amount of coding we are basically involved. So now if you see, if you remember, we were basically uh, when we are doing the demo, we were seeing that fault exception and all those policies that we have configured, right? So since we, for this particular endpoint that we are doing a call out, we have configured a fault exception, and there have specified a limit as 3 requests should only be allowed in 1 minute duration. So since within 1 minute, since I'm allowing more than I'm doing a call out more than 3 times, so it is prohibiting me from basically doing the call out. So it is the request itself is blocking here, and it is showing me the error. It's a fault exception has been encountered. Now another advantage here is like, say if you remember, our service was returning in JSON, right, the endpoint, but say you want to transform that payload, right? So for that, basically you don't need to do any single line of code in your class. So in the Apigee only, right, when we were basically configuring the policies and everything here, so here we had something called, right? So here we have some, in this sections, in the mediation section, we have something called JSON to XML or XML to JSON. So you can simply drag on, since your response is JSON, you want to just transform it into XML before rendering it to user, you can just click on this, click on add. If you want to change the node, so right now if you see here, right, it is coming as root, right, the node names. If you want to change the node name, right, so that you can simply change here. And also it just configure it, no need to touch your backend service. Backend, let the backend still return you JSON, and you simply just you just simply drag and drop this here, make the required node name changes, click on save, and when the next time whenever you hit the service, your service will take care of showing the result in an XML format. That's what this button is doing. So whenever I am clicking to JSON to XML, although it is doing a call out to that JSON service only, but since in the service level I have configured that that JSON to XML that node, so it is converting that same JSON response into XML and showing it to me here. Now here again, if you do more than subsequent callouts, right, it will give you again an exception here that quota violation or like quota violation encountered. So that is the main rationale. So what I wanted to point out is like the differences between that external services approach and this approach. So we are doing the same thing here. Only difference is here is like a lot of code is involved for doing the same boilerplate thing, and all, and also here we are passing an API key. If you want to pass an API key in our flow, my flow which I showed you was a very simple flow, but if you want to pass an API key, it's again very similar, very simple. You, before this action node, you can simply drag and drop another get record element here, and you can just store that. You can create a custom settings and you can store the API key there and just query that custom settings from here and store it in a flow variable here, and just pass this flow variable as an input here. It will take care. You don't, the same thing which we are doing here is the same thing I've replicated here via the external services. So this is the advantage. And I think I'm almost completed, and these are some of the important documents which you can refer to. So you can refer to Google APG documentations, and also this is that Swagger inspector where you can create the Swagger for any endpoints going forward. And there's one YouTube playlists also where they from for APG tutorial. So that's all from my side. Any questions you guys have?
Hey Devarun, this is Sanket. Can you hear me?
Hey, hi Sanket. Yeah, I can hear you.
So I just had a question. So in the external service flow, right? So
Right.
use the actual endpoint, the mock endpoint of the APG, right? We didn't use the proxy endpoint, correct?
No. The mock endpoint.
So what does the APG? Where does the APG proxy come into the picture for this particular flow, like for
No,
the service
no
flow?
for this external services flow, that will not come into picture. Like this external services flow which I told you, right? Here the APG which we have created as a proxy will not come into picture, because here we are directly specifying the actual target endpoint. Okay, so what I wanted to show here is like, so say if you have an actual endpoint, right, where there is no gateway layer involved, and you want to directly do a call out, right, to that service where it is not going through a gateway layer, okay, or a middle layer or a proxy layer, then you can follow this approach of like creating name creation external services to just do a call out, and you don't need to end up writing that same boilerplate code that we generally write in all the Apex classes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
So that difference I wanted to show, like the pain points, like so because in most of the places also we have a direct services present, right? So we can directly do a call out with doing this. But the only thing is like this was a get call which I've showed you, but if it's a post call also we can do that using external services. But you have to keep in mind that if the payload, right, which you are sending, the body for post call, the body that you are sending, if that is of complex structure, right, then external services is like still not mature to support that. If it's a simple body, right, like it contains not complex objects in the body that you are sending to the external service, then it will work. So I have done that for an Amazon API gateway where we are where we are doing a post call with a object type. So that it is working in that scenario. But only thing is like if within an object, if you have another object, that kind of complex schema, it will not work.
Okay. Thanks.
Hi, Devarun.
Hey, hi.
Okay, myself Simon.
Hey, hi.
Okay, so I mean, I have a question on APIG. So I mean, in pre-flow, we can enable n number of policies like.
Yes, you can enable n number of policies, and you can like if you see here, like this is the pre-flow is like whenever the request comes, this is the first thing that will hit.
Yeah.
So here if you see pre-flow, like whenever you go to this pane, you get two sections here. Like above request, you get one step. In the response also, you get one step, right? So here, if you click on this step, you can add as many policies if you want, and you can rearrange also between them. Like if you remember, like in one of the video I was showing you, like I enabled here API key, and you want the API whenever someone is calling an API, it needs to be first protected via the API key first. Then you can just simply swap it here. So first, this whatever block you place it here will be encountered first.
Okay, got it.
And also, yeah.
Yeah, is there any recommendations for policies for order? Like first we need to create this policy, Then
No, there is
after
no recommendation. It totally depends on your business need. But good practice is like, obviously you will try to protect your endpoint, right, from unnecessary like DOS attacks and all are there, right? So to prevent against all those kind of attacks, generally every big companies have this quota policies and this spike arrest policies, right? They have this configured. What can happen is like sometimes within few seconds also maybe 25 requests are coming, right? So that is an
yeah,
abnormal increase in the network traffic. So we need to prevent those kind of a thing. So for handling those kind of a thing, this security related policies like spike policies and spike arrest policies, quota policy comes into picture. But
okay,
now
okay.
you might have a requirement like this. I did directly I added all these policies to my own the actual endpoint. But say you don't want to protect your base endpoint, but you want to protect your what I say conditional flow endpoint, like your custom domain endpoint, right? So then what you can do is you can simply specify your that endpoint, whatever endpoint you want to give here, and just click on add, and then just go to that like this pre-flow close flow, that particular section, that path name will come here. Just click on that path. Similarly, in that path also you will have this step and this step in both request and response. So just click on that step. So what will happen is like only whatever policies you will be adding, right? That policies will be limited to that particular path only, endpoint only, not to all.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah. So this is the advantage.
Hey Devran.
Yeah, hi.
Hey Devran. This is Sridhar. So basically, you have told in the external service we can use the API key by getting
No,
it
not the
from the
API key.
custom.
No, not the API key. Like if your endpoint uses API key, then you can store that API key in the custom object, like custom object or in custom settings, and use get record element here to just query that and just fetch that API key here
Yeah.
before doing the
Yeah.
call out.
What if we are using what if the external service is using OAuth2? Like how can we do it? We need two flows,
Again we
or
have
like how it is
no.
called?
You are telling it is only protected by OAuth and there is no API key involved there. It is simply protected by OAuth. There is no API key action involved in that API, right? That is what.
So yeah, we get the access token, and with access token we call out the service.
Yeah,
So in that case, how it is done?
Yeah, so what you can do is like you can store the access token in this variable, right? And again you can drag and drop another action element. So you will get basically the schema here, right, in external service. So this action you will have to drag and drop basically two actions here. One action will be basically to get the token, right? So one action will be to call that auto class which got created for token, and that token which you got saved, using that token you have to just call this. You have to drag and drop another action element, and from that drop down where we were getting all the classes, right, Apex classes, you need to choose that the actual base endpoint class and pass this access token which you have retrieved in the previous step.
Okay. So
but to get any client secret, you still need to store in an object.
Yeah, got it. So coming back to APG, like does we need to call like suppose for accessing the access token and for calling out the real service, does we need separate endpoints in APG, or is it the same endpoint?
No, it's the same endpoint. So if you remember this Postman, I did this call out, right, to this my demo reverse proxy, the one which we created, and we passed this grant credential. So this endpoint is not our backend endpoint, that mock target one. It is our endpoint only, the APG endpoint which we have created. So we did a call out to our APG endpoint only, and we returned me the access token.
Yeah, but generally, whenever you're calling an external service, they have two APIs. One will be returning the access token, and other will be returning the actual service or actual payload.
Yeah, so this one is the middle one. Yeah, this. Okay. No. So what you are telling is like you are telling in general service, like any integration. Generally, you have two services. One is for the token one, right? Another is the actual service. That is the best practice one. Generally, what we generally do is like we generally create two endpoints. Like what I have done is like, even if you see this video also, which I have mentioned in the resources tab for APG, they have created two endpoints. That is the best point. You create one endpoint called no target endpoint, which is for just OAuth one. OAuth means you will just call that endpoint and it will give you the access token and nothing else. There will be no, it will not relate to the backend service. Once you get that access token from that service, that FPG service which you have created, which is a no target type one, use that access token to do a call out to this reverse proxy endpoint, which is another new endpoint which you have created, which will actually do a call out to the actual backend service. So in that way, what you have to do is like your organization, right? Say you're doing, there are multiple integration in your project. So everyone has a common layer. Like they don't need to like add everything in one place. So that OAuth part will be separated. So all the integrations, whatever callouts you're doing from your Salesforce to any external system, will go through via that FPG layer first.
So
does
any
that
other
answer?
person have any questions?
Hi, Deb, Hari here. So is there any possibility like we can call multiple backend systems in a single API call?
No, here like it was only giving you an option to just select one, right? But there I see there are like I have not explored that part. Like while configuring the reverse proxy, you get an option to specify only one part. But once you go to the policies here, right? So here under this sections, right, there are a lot of other things like other service callouts and everything else is there. So maybe once the request comes, you can just add this policy, and maybe before calling your desired endpoint, desired backend, if you want to call any intermediate backend, you can use this feature to call that first and then call your actual backend. So this one you can use, and even you can invoke your JavaScript code also. Like you can in any of this pre-flow, right? You can add a JavaScript policy file here, and you can write your JavaScript code, and that custom JavaScript code will be executed.
Okay.
Plus a lot of connectors are available, like you can basically go through them. Like
hi Devin, Akash here. So I have two questions. First of all, to call the endpoint URL from APG, there like in endpoint we need an access token. From where we'll get the access token? From APG to the endpoint.
So access token is again totally dependent on your needs. If you have made your endpoint access token protected, right, or API key protected. If you remember, I went to this publish tab, right? In publish tab, there was an API product, there was a developer tab and app. So under apps, if you go to that app which you have created for your proxy, right? So in that you will get one thing called key, which is a client ID, and you will get this as client secret.
So this is for the calling from the Salesforce to APG. But what about the APG to the endpoint URL? For that, where I get the key, like for endpoint
you are telling like if there in your actual backend service, if there is an endpoint protect, generally we don't have that kind of restriction, because we are generally protecting it in the gateway level only.
Okay.
So what you are telling is like if you're directly calling a service which is an protected by an API key and secret, then that is a valid one. Then we have to follow the same thing. We have to call this whatever is will be the OAuth URL for that. We have to call that, get the access token, and then pass that access token to your that desired endpoint and do it. But that same thing, instead of handling all the thing in the backend layer, we are directly bringing in the middle layer, in the proxy layer. So that protection is already there, we are ensuring in the gateway level. So unless unless no one has a proper valid, they will not be able to call it. They will not be able to call the desired service only. So there is no need of again making a double protection in the backend level, because we are already having the same check in the gateway level only, gateway layer only.
Okay. Okay, fine. So my second question, like if in endpoint there is an issue, some code breakdown happen, and I'm calling from the Salesforce and some error is coming. So can I capture it here in APG or something? I can check from there.
You can capture. That is the advantage of using this trace feature.
Okay.
So if you remember here, one thing is like if you have written a code, you can definitely get those captured in the debug logs, in your Salesforce debug logs.
Yep.
Another place is you can directly go to your service, whatever service. You can just give your endpoint and click, just start this trace session and click on this send button. Okay. Here it will show you all the step-by-step details. So if I click on this,
I can get here after some fail happen in an endpoint, and then I can trace it here by starting the trace, and I can debug one by one. But before that, something fail, and that is automated process. So how can I get that? Yeah, my service got failed, or some pop up or some mail can I get from here? Like in the middle of something, like it's working for the day and night, and in middle of night it got failed. Some issue came. It got failed. Some like notification or some mail I can get, so I can know that my service got failed.
So you're telling, so you're telling that mail from this proxy one. So there are two endpoints in proxy. Like if the proxy fails, I have not explored that option whether we have any send email kind of a ability from this APG to send an email to the recipients. That I am not sure. That I need to check whether if any error happens. Runtime, like real time, we can come here and we have to just click on the send button. We can check what is happening. But what you are telling is a valid one. So that I am not sure whether we have any such ability here to send an email or not on failures. Like I've not seen any configuration here to basically configure the recipient list and send an email. I've not found any predefined thing here, but there will be something here that I need to explore.
Okay, thank you.
So guys, last 1 minute. Okay, if you guys have any questions, so you can ask. So after 1 minute, we can end the call.
Hi, this is Hari. Is there any monitoring system available here in APG?
Yeah, monitoring is there. Like it inbuilds provide you performance things here. So you can monitor here like on an hourly basis, like average request size, response size, error, like sudden traffic has increased, maybe, right? Those kind of a thing you can monitor here based on in which environment your APG has been deployed. You can monitor it on hourly basis, day basis, and you can simply monitor the curve here. And it also gives an ability to integrate, since it's a Google feature, right? Google APG. So you have analytics ability also. Like you can have Google Analytics also, and you can specify, you can see the trends, like how it is going. But yeah, so maybe if your question is like, if any error happens here, can we route it to Splunk or any centralized error framework, right? So that ability, because that again we have to see, because not all the extensions will be available here. So we need to see whether that is a supported extension or not, where we can just relay. Because we have done for Kafka. So from APG to Kafka, there is one connector available for our different purpose, but we have to see for this we have or not.
So for Splunk, I can tell is there, because in my project, in my organization, we are using APG and they Splunk connected that one. So some error came in Splunk.
Okay. We can. Yeah. So then we're using that connector, we can do it.
So guys, can we wrap up now? So it's already, I think we are ahead 20 minutes. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us. And yeah, we will share our PPTs and our recorded videos over our YouTube channel. Please subscribe our YouTube channel. It's Bangalore Developer Group. So you will get this video and this whole recording in 2 days there. So if you have any question regarding this process, you can ask offline to Devaran regarding this, and you can ask to, and you can reach out to us anytime. We will be happy to share your experience, and if you have any questions regarding these sessions, and if you are thinking like we can improve any way, like in meetings and all, so you can reach out anytime to us. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Madan.
Thanks everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.